Welcome to Ascend Growth AI podcast, where we explore smart growth moves with real leadership stories. I'm Nikki, and today I'm excited to welcome Mark Muston. Mark is the owner and leader behind his company, where he and his team focus on solving meaningful problems, driving growth, and building systems that truly serve their customers. Today's conversation will dive into Mark's journey as a leader, what's working inside his business, the challenges he's navigating, and how technology, especially AI, is shaping the next chapter of growth. Mark, I'm really glad to have you here.
Thanks, Nikki. Excited to be here.
To start us off, can you tell us about your company and your journey to building it?
Yeah, definitely. Clarity Health is focused around better care for chronic gut conditions. And what that really stems from is my background in healthcare more broadly, and also my own personal 4-year medical odyssey of getting to the right diagnosis and the right treatment plan for my own ongoing gut issues. And so we know we're a primary point of care. We are a virtual clinic specifically for, any type of chronic gut condition. That could be IBS, that could be constipation, heartburn, GERD, something like SIBO, if you've ever heard of that, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, kind of the full spectrum of gut or GI care. Our goal is to deliver that the best we can with a functional medicine lens, AI tooling, and a best in class national virtual network of providers trained both in the tools we use as well as the clinical model that we take. And so we're very excited to continue to grow and continue to help as many people as we can.
That's fantastic because that's an area that and there's a lot of confusion on. There's lots of things out there and a lot of promises that are made, and it's fantastic if you have that really nailed down. I think
hmm
especially for people who have been struggling for a really long time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a very quick interjection, on average, it takes 4 years to get an IBS or an irritable bowel syndrome diagnosis. So sadly, this is a group of patients who are used to multi-year confusion, multi-year struggles. And so it's just an area that myself and the team are incredibly excited to help these folks. And, a lot of us have either treated it or been through it directly. And we know how long of a struggle this can be and how confusing of a road it can be on your own.
Yeah. Looking back, what originally pulled you into the leadership of and entrepreneurship?
I think it's like some version of kind of feeling a strong sense of need and feeling a strong sense of kind of like creative desire. I think, specifically around this space, as I mentioned, this was something I experienced personally. And the more I looked into it, a lot of very close friends and family have experienced this as well. And I think the strong sense of need was just, I truly, truly think if we don't build this, it won't get built. And so I think there's just, the stats commonly used, 1 in 3 working adults has a GI diagnosis on their clinical record within the last year. So the prevalence is extremely common. We've all been through various forms of GI care, and they all have generally a less than 1 in 4 chance of long-term success. And we have a model that sees, upwards of 60% of that. And so I think that was the really first thing, was this strong sense of need. If I truly think, again, this needs to exist in the world. And we're very fortunate that the team we have together are the right folks to build something like this. And so we're all very excited to bring that out. And then I think also just my own personal motivation is, I think there's something I just find really, really motivating and beautiful about the journey of building a company. I think it's, sort of like any competitive person climbing a mountain or achieving, running a triathlon or an Ironman or whatever it is. I think there's this idea of kind of a large aspiration and a very fun vision that you just tirelessly grind away at for years of your life to achieve.
How has your leadership style evolved as the business has grown?
Yeah, so I think this has been probably one of the hardest challenges for me as a leader, given it's the earliest I've started. I started my career at Citibank, 250,000 employees, doing all across the world, and then moved on to, a health tech startup, so an early stage company, but still most of my time there was, 200 plus employees. And so I think, being a leader when you're managing teams or managing managers is a very different feeling than, being the leader of a small tactical kind of group. And so I think it's forced me to really lean in on a very individual level of how do I best support, motivate, and understand every individual person. Because in the early stages of a company, one key player performing at their best or not could be what makes or breaks your whole company.
Plus, you're in a really personalized role, even helping the individual people that are in a place of
Mhm.
desperation too, as well.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting, I really love about healthcare specifically is it's one of those industries where you can truly do well by doing good. You can build something that you're really proud of, both as a business and also as a societal impact. And so, yeah, to your point, it kind of raises the stakes on, are we all performing at our best? There's someone health on the other end of that line.
Yeah. Were there any pivotal moments that were hard lessons early on that shaped how you lead today?
From a leadership perspective, I think the biggest thing that was a hard lesson, this really comes down to like two things. One is around on the people side, and one is around the business strategy side as a leader. So I think on the simpler one is on the strategy side. I had this common phrase I used of like, I was coming up with level one ideas. We were looking for, the obvious things folks wanted to build in the space, or the kind of the obvious solutions that didn't didn't really solve a pain point as much as they were cool, interesting, or kind of trending at the time. And I think as a business strategy, what we found early on is we had tourist traction, but we didn't have deep pain traction. We weren't really solving something that folks, needed solved that week as much as we were piquing their interest and maybe entertaining them with something that ultimately helped them, but wasn't really a priority. So I think that was a hard lesson for the first, the early months of the business. And we pivoted pretty notably into focusing on a population that really has a strong pain point. So those who have a chronic gut condition, versus our initial model is more around kind of this role of direct primary care, replacing primary care. And so I think that on a strategy side was a good reminder of, you know, if people aren't calling you, you probably haven't solved the pain point that's loud enough, or important enough. And I think that changed very quickly when we found this space. And then I think on the leadership role side, I think particularly in like lean teams and small teams, being really, really aware of how the role changes with the person. And I think, we've all written countless job descriptions and pitched what this job is going to be. And you kind of read the person as you're hiring. And also what you find is as you get into it and you work closely with them, you learn, there's areas that you did or didn't expect that they do really well. And there's areas that you did or didn't expect that they either struggle with, or just you can see that it drains them. And I think that's something, we had to learn pretty quickly, or I had to learn as a leader pretty quickly is, while someone could do this task, it drains them and they don't do it well. So we should find another place to get that task done, whether that's a new hire or a contractor or myself filling in those gaps. But I think that was something that, I've increasingly grown appreciation for is, just how do we, still do what the business needs, but structure it in a way that brings out the best in people. Cause that's typically where you see the best cultures.
That's for sure. Who would you say is your ideal customer right now, the people that you serve the best?
Yeah. So right now, our ideal customer is kind of like the typical persona would be someone, single or married or in a long term, but working a fairly demanding job, dealing with an issue and having a balance of like wanting to solve it, but not having the desire or tools to solve it themselves. I think the joke we always give in today's world with AI, you can kind of DIY anything. You can build a house through YouTube if you really want to. And so, we found early on is, well, we're interesting to kind of the biohacker, that kind of bleeding edge community. We really, really resonate with the folks who believe that that better care exists. They need to solve this problem, but are looking for someone to guide them through that journey and kind of play that role of a very hands-on clinician-led model versus, as we've all done, piping into ChatGPT and hoping for the best.
What trends are you seeing in your industry right now that are impacting your growth strategy?
I think the biggest trend we're seeing is around this growth and consumerization of health. I think, it's interesting. You see these kind of like mini and like micro and macro bull bear cycles within kind of all areas of healthcare. And I think consumer health is sort of combining both a micro and a macro bull cycle around more and more awareness, more ownership, and more advocacy for people's health. And I think you're seeing that at a time where frankly a lot of insurance covered conventional healthcare outcomes, aren't achieving what people want to see, and for a price that people can't afford to or don't want to pay. And so you're seeing more and more of this push for kind of the HSA, FSA, or the cash pay ecosystem. And so that's something that's very important to us, and we're leaning to full on as we get started. Of we are a cash pay clinic, and our belief there is that we're allowed to build, spend the time we want to spend with the clinical model we want to use and the tools we want to use because we're not constrained by the intense limitations of insurance. And so for us in the healthcare space, what we find is it's an incredibly powerful clinical model we get to use. And it's incredibly exciting for both the clinicians who get to practice that as well as the members who come through the door.
Are you everywhere? Are you virtual? Are you how's it work? Where are
Should have,
you?
yeah, that's a great question. And that is, I should have included that in the initial description. Yeah, we're a virtual national clinic. So we're available everywhere in the US, just in the US for now, but everywhere. And we are exclusively virtual.
How are you and your team adapting or mitigating those industry shifts?
Yeah. So I think one of the most interesting things going on in healthcare right now is this idea of there's really kind of two things. AI is over time has potential to eliminate all or most of all back office administrative tasks. And then there's also this like very interesting question around can AI replace the doctor? And that is a very hot debate. So I'll just put a pin in that for a second. But the thing that we're really excited about is we're actually leaning into this disruption in the sense that we couldn't build Clarity Health 3 years ago. The AI tools were not good enough. The infrastructure was not there. The clinical network was not large enough. And so what that means is like we've actually unlocked a $25,000 experience for $3,000 because we're using AI effectively to basically take what a clinician would normally have to do in a very high end concierge medical clinic for 25 hours, and we're distilling that down to something they can do in 2. So that's something we're really excited about, and we're seeing that already in the way we build care plans, the way we pull insights from visits, and how we're tracking symptoms and all that stuff. It's some really really cool things we can do there. So that's the first disruption around admin goes to zero. I think it's probably true outside of healthcare as well, but I think it's uniquely powerful in healthcare because the cost of a unit of time or the cost of provider hours is so high that there's types of care you just couldn't do before AI that we can now do at Clarity at a reasonable price point and reasonable scale. And the second one is this idea of like AI replacing the doctor. And I think that is one that we're very aware of. And I would say we very much lean into AI. We're very excited about it. But we typically follow kind of more of the Tesla style. So like our current offering is extremely clinician in the loop. They are decision makers. They are the ultimate say on everything on a member's care plan. They're meeting regularly, one-on-one visits with every member they manage. And so it's very much AI in support of that clinician. And sort of how Tesla kind of their long arc to self-driving of sort of like starting with a really nice cruise control and now they're, operating in can't remember how many cities these days. And so we sort of see that as an arc that we're building as well. Over time, when clinically appropriate for certain members in certain situations, can AI be the actual member facing experience? And so, the classic example is we have a longer term relapse prevention plan that folks would kind of graduate into over time. Is that something we should offer an AI only option to? And just they still have all the support they need with a clear escalation pathway of when to loop in a clinician. And so I think that's that second side of like what is, can an AI doctor, can AI replace a doctor rather? And so I think that's how we're leaning into it. And we're also, frankly, redefining the role of the clinician. And so I won't go too deep in that one, but just we spend a lot of time thinking about, what is the value of working with a clinician? What is the value with working with a personal trainer, a wealth manager, a lawyer, all these things. And I do think that value has a tangible sense outside of just the diagnoses. And so we're very much leaning into, building a network of clinicians who do really well at those other kind of human components that do wonders to motivate and support someone on a care plan.
What's one area that you wish you were using AI more?
I think the area that we're probably most excited about is around kind of leaning even further into proactive member management and like root cause diagnoses. And so we're using it in both of those. I think there's a lot of work that, we know we need to do around just building those models, making them more robust, kind of getting the right guardrails there to really have more of those moments of magic. On the diagnosis side, we've had a few, but like we're not having those kind of like helping that clinician find that like one in a million kind of situation or kind of finding those edge cases. And then on the proactive management side, we're monitoring symptoms, but we're really excited for this kind of next phase where it's proactively alerting, hey, this person's not moving at the speed we'd expect in this protocol. It might be that they're having an adverse reaction to this supplement or treatment. And so I think those are the two areas that we're very much excited. And I would say we're underusing AI as we're just at that stage of still kind of getting going.
Yeah. I think it is gonna be a really crucial part of operations,
Yeah.
marketing, customer experience, decision making, all of it as
Yeah.
it continues to have the right kind of input and the right kind of, I guess, more information input into it, right? And then
Yeah.
working on the right prompts and everybody's fine tuning it. It's like, I think it's fantastic. I think it's going to be really helpful. I think what it ends up doing is it ends up allowing when you do have the human experience actually ends up being more quality because the AI gathered a lot of information, started a decision making process, gave awareness, and then the person who's doing the face to face just jumps in at the part that the
Yeah.
customer needs, which is what do I have and what do I do? Right? That's what they're
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best things I think in healthcare is, there's kind of this joke of like the provider actually looks at you during your visit. Not everywhere, not yet, but with the growth of, we built our own in-house AI scribe for all of our sessions that just fits best with our clinical model. But for all these scribing tools that are out there, it's they're so, every provider has limited time. They're so focused on did I get the right prescription, the right next step, and the right test. And as that gets more and more supported through our tooling and back end, they can kind of swivel their chair and face you head on and actually hear you. And so I think to your point, like, and that's the part, where humans can be really good humans.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Where are areas that you feel AI can help you capture more customers or lost leads?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest areas that we are very humble of kind of our current stage on is on the marketing side of just, helping us to really refine what are the right, what's the right marketing that works with the right personas. How do we take, an even more tactical and kind of A/B test driven approach to that? How do we kind of use AI to have, a much higher amount of marketing content that is more curated, more personalized. And so I think that's something that we're excited on that sense of, how do we fill that top of funnel in a more nuanced fashion because we can now, generate 40 different kind of marketing approaches versus current, previously you had to do it all by hand or through a designer. And so I think that side, and then I think the other one too is, I mean, what every clinic is guilty of is, how are you staying in touch? How do you retain? How do you make sure your members know when their next visit is and to schedule their next visit and do their next action? And we've built a lot of tooling around that, but I think that's an area that can be incredibly powerful, as we quarter our model, as we're building these sort of like internal digital twins as we get to know each member deeper and deeper over time. And so how do we use that to engage them in a way that fits well for them? As simple as, we know to text them because the response rate's higher and we're automatically doing that, or we know, when to nudge them or how far in advance and kind of tracking both inputs and outputs in that sense.
It's really great. So, what is working really well that you're very proud of right now?
I mean, I think no surprise from a healthcare clinic, but I think we're most proud of the clinical care we're providing in the sense of, is having real results. We're having those moments of, we're truly delivering kind of a diagnosis that a member is never going to get somewhere else. And we're seeing outcomes of folks with multi-year conditions, you know, getting to a level of health they didn't think they could ever get back to. So I think there's a lot we're excited about. There's a lot we're building, and certainly a lot of things too we are proud of. But I think first and foremost, we are just really really excited. Of the deeper we get into this, the more confident and you know more moments of magic we're seeing clinically.
Do you record all of your success stories?
We've not done the case studies and the recordings the way we should. It's interesting. It is on our list to do a better job. Our website is comically missing testimonials, but one of 98 things on my to-do list that will get solved.
If you were starting over today, what would you tell your younger self to do differently?
I think the biggest thing early on was find deep pain and then bury your head building something for that deep pain. I think we've had a lot of really, really good potential partnership conversations and we've had some really good investor conversations. And, we've had a lot of conversations that have been really, really helpful and informative and probably a year before we needed them. You start thinking about how are we going to work with health plans and how we're going to work with employers. And that's a space that we're not going to tackle for 2 or 3 years. You start talking to investors who are really excited for 2 rounds from now and all those things. So I think you know as much as that was helpful, the most important thing we could have done was once we find that pain faster and then get the team together, bury our heads in the sand, and just maniacally build for that cohort or that group of people, and just kind of let the product do the talking to help with kind of some of those other conversations.
Good. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to become a CEO or a business owner today?
That's a good one. I mean, maybe cliche in healthcare, but I think like the first advice I would have is get your health and your house in order before you go down that road. I think, there's kind of like three areas that, I'm very blessed that I have a very healthy and happy family life, and we're financially in a position where we can do this. And health, I is getting drastically better. Thank you to Clarity Health. But, all those things in hindsight, I just don't think I was mentally prepared for kind of like, what this would do to relationships in my life, whether that's my wife or friends or family, what this would do financially if it doesn't happen as quickly as I think. And then also for my own health, what this can do to your health if you don't handle it well. And also how important it is to have your health when, your impact is just so magnified in this early stage. I think, yeah, health, house, personal, all those things are important to get in order before you kind of make that jump or leap, and it will make that first year so much better.
That's an excellent response. It's unique, believe it or not, but it's actually probably one of the best responses I've heard. What's the biggest win that stands out in your mind over the last 5 to 10 years?
I think, because of healthcare, my previous role prior to starting Clarity Health is I worked at a company called Modern Health. So it's mental health insurance primarily through the employer channel. And, so during that time, I led their provider network and then led a team called Strategic Initiatives. So kind of, the big hairy problems that need an owner. And I think the most proud is just looking back on the impact we were able to have in that space. And I think by the time I left, when I joined, we were doing a few dozen therapy and coaching sessions in a week. And when I left, I think we were doing a few thousand in a day. So I think you go back and you just look at the scale across. So we were, I mean, the website stats probably have it, but we directly were operating in over 80 languages, pretty much every known territory and country unsanctioned in the world. And to just see those member testimonials, I think was one of the kind of most powerful moments in my professional career. Of not only was it a unicorn business and we achieved all these business milestones that extremely exciting to see, like, something built from such a small start to such a big finish. But I think also along the way to just know how many people you were helping and how deeply is something that I'll always have a sense of pride for the whole team that I worked with there during that period.
Describe, for the person who doesn't know, describe the process of how your clinic works.
Yeah, great question. So the way to get started with Clarity Health is we go through a 6-week gut health assessment, or just a gut assessment, as we call it. And the idea here is to really build a foundation around someone's gut health. It also, frankly, there's no long-term commitment. There's no ongoing membership or any of that thing. We just a one-time fee. We want to just give folks an insight they've probably never gotten before. We want to give them a chance to be seen and heard in a way they probably never have before. And so that process over the 6 weeks, you go through an at-home gut microbiome and stool chemistry test. A little bit character building if you've never done something like this, but the insights are truly worth it. And you go through 2 different clinician visits. So you have one dedicated clinician you're matched with. You do a 60-minute intake with them. Then you do a 30-minute assessment visit with them. And all this culminates in think we're now 30-page report. So it's fairly robust, but someone walks you through it. Don't worry. A 30-page gut assessment report, which is really just, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what all the testing and data is showing. Here's the hypothesis we have of what the root cause is or what the underlying drivers are. So we have a common saying that Dr. Aaron Gattuso, our head of clinical, uses of symptoms are like the body's way of signaling to you something's going on. It's sort of like the language that your body uses. So don't stop at symptoms. Figure out why the symptoms are existing. And so that's sort of that signal component. And so we kind of tie all it together and say, hey, here's our hypothesis, here's our belief of what's causing these symptoms in the first place. Then here's a step by step, kind of as granular as we can, guide of care plan protocol of how you could attack that at the root cause. And so that's what it all culminates in. And then for those where it makes sense, we have an ongoing membership we call our reversal plan. And so it's kind of the natural next step for a lot of folks who join is they go through that gut assessment. They say, this looks great. I want to get started. And I would love to have Clarity support me through that journey. And so they'll move on from that gut assessment into a reversal plan. And that reversal plan will be personalized to their needs. So they'll meet with their clinician, the same clinician who did their assessment. They'll meet with them at whatever cadence that clinician recommends. So usually between 4 and 8 weeks. And so kind of some folks need a higher touch, some folks need a less frequent. And so we really kind of build that care journey for them. And that's kind of phase two. So you come in for this gut assessment. And then if it makes sense, you'll kind of continue through that reversal plan. And then they'll stay through that until they'll see kind of that all these symptoms sort of reverse is the term we use. So like that long-term remission sense. And as those symptoms reverse, then folks will typically kind of graduate into what we call like a prevention plan. So this idea of kind of a little bit of like a less intense, lower touch model that still gets them all the benefits of clarity, but without the same level of commitment that they're making during that reversal period. So we kind of take that three-phase approach and we really try and build a custom journey for that member. So we're giving them, exactly what they need.
That's fantastic. So when you look back at now, look back over how you developed it and everybody that's been through it, what have you learned from the experience at this point?
At this point, I think the biggest thing we've learned is around really understanding kind of how to meet members where they are and give them what they're excited about. And I think what I mean by that is, we've tested different provider types or multiple providers and like robust care teams and kind of higher frequency, lower frequency. Do we generate an AI driven meal plan for every visit? Do we, incorporate a dietitian in between every visit? A lot of those types of iterations. And ultimately what we found was we needed to kind of blend what do we think the best clinical care is and where are members most excited. And I think that's one of the benefits of building in the consumer space is you get really good feedback really early if someone values that service. And so, if someone values that dietitian, they're happy to pay out of pocket. If they don't, they shy away from that plan. And so what we found is that for our model and our belief and how we can layer AI in to support this is having one sole provider who spends the most time possible with you and really gets to know you was really, really valuable, more so than a care team. And so we sort of had this learning of like, let's have one dedicated clinician. Let's make them great. Let's spend as much time as they can with this member, and then let's layer in AI tools around them to support the areas that a care team might play. And so we can really have the benefit of one point of contact while also not losing some of the tooling that comes along with some of these other kind of care team models. So that's something we've looked back on and been really, really excited about learning. And I will humbly say, I fully expect us to continue learning in that space. And so, as much as we really, really believe in the model we have now, we are humble enough to know it will evolve as we go.
Given that you're used to solving problems of magnitude, what are you most focused on right now?
Hmm. Most focus on, I think, honestly, scaling is like, I think there's like some very nuanced back end questions of like, you know, can our diagnosis model do this or can our supplement recommendation model do that? But I think the biggest one that the biggest kind of thing that keeps me awake at night is, we have a great clinical model, we have great clinical outcomes, we have a great core team. You know, how do we make sure? And this is something I learned through a lot of lessons at Modern Health is, how do you scale this to thousands of sessions a day and don't lose the magic that people feel and love at this stage of the journey?
If people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, they're welcome to reach out to me personally directly, Mark at getclarity.health. They can go to getclarity.health as our website. They can find me on LinkedIn as Mark Muston. Anyway and always are welcome. And yeah, hopefully if this resonates with you, we'd love to help you, whether that's professionally, whether that's in your own health and more personally. But, we're so excited about what we're building and we're so excited for all the people we will help and share it with along the way.
Yeah. And I think America in particular, with everything that's going on with our food, with our water, with our air, you're needed more now than ever before. And I think it's what you're trying to do and what you're achieving is needed, appreciated, respected.
Yeah, it's a sad time when you look at kind of the rise of chronic conditions and you look at declining health and the average American on 4 prescriptions and all these things. But it's also a really motivating time when you look at, kind of folks really understand waking up to the importance of what they eat, the importance of kind of how they live their life and the importance of kind of moving away from a pill for every ill to a model that is more root cause oriented. So I think, while the backdrop is not as bright and sunny as we'd hope, I think there's a lot of green shoots and optimism, as folks increasingly expect this and demand this and go out and vote and act for this.
Yeah, for so true. This has been a great conversation. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your drive and your consistency with continuing to work through it because people need it. And it's a very confusing topic. And it's old, but it's newer at the same time because we're just getting so hit with how chronic inflammation and these illnesses, how serious they are. And I think it's really great to approach it from a healthy standpoint. And also, we need to get you more noticed, even more noticed, so that you can reach more people.
Definitely. Yeah, I joke we need to spend less time in the clinic and more time on the website and marketing, but we're here. The care is great. The testimonials will be up soon. But yeah, by all means, if anyone, if it's an interesting space you just want to talk about, if it's it's an interesting space for you and your own health journey, either way, door is open. We truly believe that this is a time in America and in the world where, this is a rising tide in a very, very positive way. And we want to support everyone else in the ecosystem who's pushing for this. And I think, awareness is our friend and there's a lot of good things ahead.
Thank you, everyone. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. And if you got value from today's conversation, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time on Ascend Growth AI Podcast, where we mix smart growth moves with a little AI magic.